In 1898, the Journal of Education published an educational allegory by Amos E. Dolbear, writing under the pseudonym Aesop Jr. In his allegory, Dolbear is rightly critical of one-size-fits-all testing methods that are still being used today. Dolbear's eagle received demerits even though he reached the top of the tree because he could not accomplish the task in the prescribed way. He flew instead of climbed. Dolbear's duck was required to learn to run. The result was that the time taken by the duck in learning to run the prescribed rate had so hindered him from swimming that he was scarcely able to swim at the prescribed rate. Too often, we become so caught up in the rules that we miss the essence of what we hope to accomplish. If the goal is getting to the top of the tree, does it make any difference if the student flies or climbs as long as they accomplish the goal? Good pedagogy is not finding the single best practice to enforce on all students. It is designing pedagogies that lead to student success. I am not arguing that there are no skills that everyone in a class needs to learn. But if students need to do something in a certain way, we must be very clear as to why the required process is important. For example, there is a correct way to write an author's name in a particular format. Berg, Stephen L. is wrong in APA, which requires Berg, SL. If a student is in the sciences, they need to know that the correct way to get to the top of the tree for their discipline is a type of proper documentation that they likely will not learn in their English classes. When I teach formatting, I tell students about the time I had a manuscript rejected because I used the wrong formatting. I pose the rhetorical question, should an editor trust my research if I am too careless not to getting the formatting requirements right for the particular publication? Proper documentation, as defined by the discipline, is a must for getting to the top of a tree. In my face-to-face classes, I require students to purchase a 1.5-inch binder with 31 pre-printed tabs. Students must follow these directions or I won't grade their binder at the end of the semester. I do provide students with the rationale for this requirement and hope that they understand that I am not simply being arbitrary because they have no choice other than to do what I say. But for most of what we do in the classroom, such rigidity is not required. When we require that our students make certain purchases, we must remain conscious of the financial reality faced by our students. We know that 67% of community college students work while in college, while 32% work 35 plus hours per week. Many attend school part-time because they cannot afford full-time tuition and books. Requiring a specific type of binder and specific tabs is a big potential burden for students. I feel comfortable with this requirement, however, because at my particular institution, our college bookstore can supply students with the binder tabs for less than $10. Furthermore, I almost never use formal textbooks in my on-campus classes. On those rare occasions when I do require a trade book, I set a maximum price of $25, but they are generally in the $9 to $18 range. As professors, we need to be conscientious of any financial constraints placed on our students. Students frequently do not have the disposable income for extras, which can be defined as anything more than tuition. For many students, the extras include not only textbooks, but their lunch. I have stopped requiring students to dress professionally for class presentations, in part because students frequently do not have dress clothes to wear, and they do not have the means to purchase new clothes for one day of class. In the past, I have purchased clothes for students, but this is not a viable solution because to get my assistance, students would need to go through the often humiliating class-based outing of themselves to tell me that they didn't have appropriate clothes to wear? What if a student's anxiety prevents them from telling us what they need? Or if their family and/or culture prohibits asking for help in that way? What would happen differently in a curriculum that doesn't require such outing in order to pass? As I have grappled with these questions, I have come to another one that is even more disturbing to me. How many of my former students skipped their presentation rather than admit that they could not meet the clothing requirement? In this chapter, I'm going to begin with the myth that to have a flexible classroom, the professor needs to hide their political and spiritual beliefs. I will argue that there is a difference between using our backgrounds as individuals to influence our work in the classroom and proselytizing. For students to know those backgrounds is not the same as proselytizing to students. I will continue the chapter by building on Dolbear's criticism of inflexible rules before concluding with an essay about extending the classroom into our offices.